welcome to the channel. Today we're going to have an in-depth look at the latest 1.5 update on AMS2. But first, let's have a look at what people have been saying about this update. Philip Koch said, I was actually surprised how different the driving felt compared to pre-patch. I tried the Sauber C9 and it felt pretty good. I'd say no slidey feeling like project cars. Both cars felt good instantly from out of the box. Daniel Nito, man, you nailed it. Couldn't be happier. Not only new amazing category, but the new tracks and the new driving feel in the old content is astonishing. Nellis Borman, my son loves the RX and the gravel. I was amazed by the wet and dry track with M1 at Old Kailami. Great job. Oga Wayaka, very cool. Physics is level up. Craig Darrington, amazing job, Team Reza. My new favourite sim. Bar is now set very high. I'm so happy to finally shelve R Factor 2 for good. Bravo. 22,000. Formula Ultimate is fantastic. So easy to push now and feel the edge of the grip. Curbs and rumble strips feel so much better. 10 out of 10. So let's get down to business. We're going to be looking at dirt racing and the additional updates associated with that. We're going to look at the wet weather update. We're also going to look at the Formula 1 tyre models and also see how that translates onto the muscle car, which is also featured in this tyre physics update. We're also going to look at what you don't see, but a bit more on that later. We're going to look at pit crew comparisons. Which pit crew do you get with which car? And also we're going to have a look at what's coming up. But before we move on, please like and subscribe if you want to see more content. The previous AMS2 milestone updates all represented big leaps in quality and features. So here with AMS2 1.5, this represents a huge leap forward to make AMS2 one of the most content-rich, easy access sims available. The highlight for a lot of people is the Adrenalin Pask DLC, which introduces Rallycross to AMS2. This is massive and it opens up more opportunities for some great racing, but this couldn't be done without improved tyre physics. But first of all, let's have a look at the dirt options. First of all, we've got Rallycross, which is one of the highlights of the pack. This is a really great demonstration now of how the sim handles deformable tyres on different terrain, blending transition from dirt, gravel to tarmac and back beautifully, with an in-depth rule set that includes the use of Joker laps. So in the pack we've got the RX featuring the Citroen DS3 RX, we've got the Mini Countryman R60 RX, we've got the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 10 RX, and then we've got the Volkswagen Polo RX. All of these cars offer really good handling straight out of the box. You can feel the additional suspension, digging in for grip. Also when you go from gravel, mud, you can actually feel the change in the road surface. When you go over a jump, you can feel the tension of the wheel lift off and then punch back in as you land. The only thing I would say here is the AI can still do with development. With all of the off-road vehicles, I think the RX is the one where the AI is a bit more temperamental, as you can see here. However, I'm sure with a quick patch, that's going to be resolved quite quickly. The next vehicle is the Kart Cross. The Kart Cross is 133 brake horsepower, 0.6 litre straight 4 engine. It sounds and feels more like it's a two-stroke with high revving, loud, punchy performance. The small wheels don't offer a tremendous amount of grip, which makes drifting at relatively low speeds fun and controllable. You can actually see the suspension moving, and each of those suspension movements, along with the new physics integration in AMS2, makes this car one of the best off-road experiences out of the three classes in the pack. I noticed with this car, when it rains, there are no wipers, but you can still see. But what you do notice is that when you go from dry, dusty conditions to when it's raining, you can actually feel the slippery side of the loose gravel, mud and earth make way for a more sticky, stodgy, wet experience under the tyres. The only critique here is that you can see the dust flying up when the car's moving. So I've noticed in camera mode on the replays, you can't see the rain. The rain visuals are virtually non-existent in camera mode. Moving on to Formula Dirt, this is a 1.8 litre, 84 horsepower, it's very heavy, a lot more sluggish, but I'd say this is the off-road version of Formula Inter. This is certainly better on small, tight, twisty circuits. They're really good fun. Certainly maxes out as a high speed. It's only got 4 gears, but I think this will offer some really good close racing for everybody. probably quite a good starter vehicle for people to get into. What I would say is, again, the visuals, you can really see the rain on the tarmac parts of the circuit, and you don't really see the rain falling on the replay, with the exception of the tarmac section. The really great thing about this pack is that you don't actually have to be limited to the off-road vehicles that are present. Taking these GT3 cars around the bottom of the Nurburgring cross circuit was great fun. The cars had surprisingly a lot of grip, were really easy to control and intuitive as long as you were cautious with the throttle, and it made for some great racing, both in dry and wet conditions. All the cars were great to handle and delivered some really good performance. But also, when you look at the rally cars, putting those on a road environment, they too handle really well. The rally cars have got a lot more suspension movement, not really set up for road circuit racing, so there's a lot more movement, but actually really great fun being able to battle and enjoy the movement of the cars. That makes it easy to drift around the corners, accelerate hard, apply the power, a really good balance between under and oversteer. Besides the Adrenalin pack, there's also some other free content coming with 1.5. The Sigma P1, already previewed in the April update, was originally planned for version 1.4.8, but Reza decided to hold out for version 1.5, so they could also bring along its rival, the Metal Moro AJR, which as of 2023 also has had extensive updates that relate to the version that currently features the P1 class. The wet weather update is something that they've also talked about. Historically, in AMS2, you can take the same driving line, whether it's wet or dry, and not experience the changes that you see when rubber is laid down on circuit. This is just a small clip here of laps that I did in a simulated race at Spa. The race started off in harsh, wet conditions, and it dried out over a period of 20 minutes, not dissimilar to what we saw practice and qualifying for the Formula 1 this weekend. As every lap progressed, I was able to change exactly where I positioned the car on circuit to try and find the optimum grip. The car was predictable, but you can also feel that you're getting very fractionally penalised depending on where you sit the tyres on the tarmac. You can see here that this is a comparison of the change in the overall speed from each lap to another over a period of 4 laps. As the track slowly dries out, you want to try and avoid the inside of the curb at the apex where the water collects, but you also don't really want to be exactly in some areas of the circuit where the rubber is laid down just prior to the apex. It makes a really good experience as the track evolves every lap. The tyre physics is something that Reza's been speaking about a lot, and they've got a huge amount on their website relating to suspension geometry of each of their cars. For the historical machines, they didn't have the privilege of CAD models and data recordings, and in such cases, research is critical as quality pictures allowed them to get results that are just as accurate as those for modelling for CDA. By studying each car's suspension geometry, they were able to move on to working out suspension rates, heave frequencies, establishing critical damping ratios, which they did in aid of an internally developed suspension physics calculator. It was then time to take the virtual car out on track for a virtual shakedown to lay down the tyre carcass framework, adjusting the deflection as well as the longitudinal, lateral and sidewall properties to make sure the tyre is within expected flex and stretch limits. Testing on a diverse number of tracks, subjecting tyres through trail braking, bumps, undulations, curbs, on and off camber turns and various speeds, allowing for adjusting spring damping carcass adjustments to something more adequate for the car. The focus was then shifted to revising tyre treads and aerodynamics, over which a lot of the performance and handling of the cars is defined. Adjusting all friction, lifts, drag coefficients to match as well possible the real car data that they'd gathered. The tyre carcass and suspension, along with the loads they get subjected to affect the car's ride heights, which in which turn carries a significant impact to the car's aerodynamics, and then in turn impacts the loads on the carcass and suspension. From this point onwards, it's all about fine-tuning all the individual aspects to ensure all components are working correctly. Once things were far enough along, they were able to focus on shifting the driveline, engine, clutch, gearbox, differential, drive shafts, even wheel bearing properties are modelled and should be properly fine-tuned to ensure the power delivery of each wheel is realistically reproduced. The detail they've gone into and the amount of information they've shared online is really phenomenal. And when you compare starting from the cars from the 60s, going through to the 70s, 80s, 90s, right the way through to the modern day, you can feel the changes in the physics, you can feel the changes in the way the car handles, grips, applies power, and each of those small incremental changes is a reflection in the design and changes of the car over those decades. What's really amazing is that we get to drive so many of them as standard in AMS2. But going on to the muscle cars, the Corvette was always a car that was more difficult to handle. Of course, in real life, it's not the easiest car. It drifted, it didn't really have the same grip, but this 1.5 update massively improves the Corvette's handling. I was able to get straight in the car and drive, had to be cautious with the throttle, but what was important is it was predictable. Could I be faster? With half an hour to practice, yes I could, but being able to drive and not understeer off or experience quick oversteer, which means that the car spins out of control. The car is a lot more balanced now, which means that you can drift it around corners and really get a sense of what that car is like to drive. With the previous update we had double yellow caution flags. Now we've got the introduction of the safety car, but what actually happens? Historically, when one of the AI has a crash, that car will automatically disappear maybe after 3 or 4 seconds back to the pits. That doesn't happen now. If the safety car comes out, that car will stay in situ until the safety car has already circulated, which means you actually see the offending car in place on the track. Behind the scenes, the safety car comes out of the pit lane and waits. And then as the cars slowly circulate around the circuit, the safety car will drive off. It will then take between 10 to 30 seconds for the cars to all gather up safely behind the safety car, and then the safety car will move around the circuit with all of the cars circulating behind. As you scoot round the corner, we can see here the safety car will move around the vehicle, and then normally on the following lap the safety car will come straight into the pits and the racing will resume. This is a really great feature and really adds to the immersion of every race. The other new immersive feature is bespoke pit crew depending on the event or the year you're racing. There's 6 options here and we're going to go through them one by one just to have a look at the cars that are associated with them. Number 1, we've got casual clothes and headphones. They're going to feature in a lot of the classic retro cars, including some of the Formula Dirt kart cross where engine speeds are slightly lower. We've then got the historic fireproof suit and balaclava. This one's a bit tricky for me. This features in Formula Junior, Formula Vintage, G1, 2 and GT1. Personally, I think Formula Junior and Vintage should be moved into the previous category, and possibly some of the other cars, the Caterhams, Street Super Hyper, moved into this class. The third pit crew variant is a historic fireproof suit with full historic helmet. The next option, where we get into the modern fireproof suit, full modern helmet. These will feature in the Formula V10s, G1 and 2s, Formula V10s, Formula Reza, Formula Ultimate and Formula USA Generation 4. Number 5 is where we've also got the modern fireproof suit. We've also got a modern GT helmet in the pit crew. That's going to be in the GTE, GT3, GT4, right the way up through to the Cup cars. Then the final pit crew, we've got modern fireproof suit and then an open face modern helmet. That's going to feature in the P1 to P4, including the sprint race and Super V8. So yeah, again, a massive improvement in immersion, a few little tweaks possibly, maybe an option to have, possibly the option to have pit crew without the headphones and maybe with a cap, which would be suitable for the cars of the 1960s, but great step forward for immersion. Then finally, what everyone's been talking about, what's coming up next. We know that possibly by the end of the year or early next year, AMS2 is working on, there's certainly enough cars in the sim to be able to have some really good multi-class racing. At the moment we're still limited to a maximum size of the grids, but if Reza can develop the grid size to be over 40 or up to 50 cars, that would be absolutely fantastic. When we look at some of the historic cars that Reza already has, the only thing we're currently missing in the sim is the LMH, LMDH cars to create historic and modern races on this epic circuit. Please remember, if you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.